Fox Business Alert for you, everyone. The democratically appointed watchdog for the bailout will say some things the Democrats don't want to hear tomorrow. He's projecting that the bailout will cost you and I and every other tax-paying American out there $23.7 trillion. The scope is hard to imagine. Republican Congressman Darrell Issa joining us now to help us figure out what this all means. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us for Happy Hour. I saw you quote it, you're using the analogy to the birth of Christ, that we wouldn't have spent as much money since his birth, that this big old bailout. Very interesting to come up with that.
Well, it's even worse than that. It's if we spent $1 million a day every day since the birth of Christ, we wouldn't get to $1 trillion. And we're likely to lose far more than that. You know, having $23.7 trillion at risk basically is about 1.5 times all the money that every man, woman, and child in America produces. The entire gross domestic product's only about $17 trillion. So this is an amazing amount of money at risk. And it's okay to have it at risk in order to get America moving again. What's not okay is what we're going to hear from the special IG tomorrow, which is he's being locked out of any kind of oversight, reporting, transparency, all the things we were promised. He's being denied by his own administration.
Congressman Issa, I mean, as you look at that, and
Cody,
the numbers are staggering. Like you say, $23 trillion in guarantees, which is slightly different than the $1 trillion that we've sent outright to the crooks and their shareholders on Wall Street in the TARP bailout package. Can you sort of talk us through what you mean and just what exactly it is we're talking about when we have $23.7 million at quote-unquote risk?
Well, one of the easy John, that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, these government entities who were part of this Ponzi scheme and bought all of these subprime loans and held them, we've backed all of their debt, some $6 trillion. We've backed all of that. So that's in that number. And it means that we've said it'll be made whole. We're full faith and credit to all the people holding those bonds. That's an example of, we know we're going to lose some, we don't know how much. And the biggest problem we're having is some of these pots of money, we don't know how much they are. As a matter of fact, the special IG said that it could be plus or minus $1 trillion. Imagine having $1 trillion as your wiggle room in how much we've really guaranteed, and more importantly, what are the value of these assets? What are we likely to lose? What's the forecast? The amazing thing is we're talking about new regulations over business in reporting, and we can't even get our own government to report what they're guaranteeing and how much money they've spent.
Right. Well, Congressman Issa, and I know we've talked about this before, especially on Scoreboard, but the lack of transparency, the lack of anything is what's killing us. I went back and read the letter you wrote to Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner back in May, and you specifically point out that they hadn't even hired a single asset manager to manage the $700 billion for TARP. There was no coherent plan for these assets whatsoever, and they didn't want to adopt any of your recommendations whatsoever. So that's only $1 trillion of it, and they're not taking care of. I mean, look, this is a mess that there's nobody behind the wheel here.
Well, and this is the challenge, is I don't believe Congress should manage these monies, but if we're able to see what's going on, then we can find out whether or not they're asking the right questions, getting the right answers. And I'll give you one that should really concern you. Whether it's BlackRock or any of the other major financial industries that are involved in managing assets, so the people who are trading toxic assets on behalf of the government also are sitting at lunch and talking to all the other traders. You can imagine how much, very much insider trading could cost us $1 trillion just there.
Congressman, before we leave you, we have all these banks reporting stellar earnings, banks that Congress bailed out to get the economy, the financial system back in order. Are you happy with this, that these banks are reporting these billions upon billions of dollars of profit? So that's what everything was supposed to be doing?
Well, if you think about it, the good news is the banks reporting profit and paying us back. The bad news is $180 billion with AIG that we'll probably never see back, almost half of which disappeared into the coffers of foreign governments and some of these same banks who were made whole on bad loans by us putting money into AIG. So the good news actually is these banks are profitable, they're loaning money and earning interest and paying us back. That's kind of the good part, particularly because it's going to allow them quickly to get recapitalized.
It's bizarre world.
Our challenge is, how soon can we get our money back and stop subsidizing their profits?
Congressman Issa, we're basically out of time, but I do got, before we throw it away, you know, you put some perspective on the huge amount of dollars that we're wasting in these guarantees and whatnot. You remember the $160 billion stimulus package that you and the Republicans voted for in 2008 that was supposed to help our economy?
Yes.
I just sort of want some perspective on that. $160 billion we wasted on AIG, too.
You know, you're absolutely right that at the time that we voted for this cash stimulus, it wasn't a particularly good idea. It didn't work. And now we've repeated it, and we're talking about repeating it again. You know, one of the problems we have in Washington is we're not usually willing to admit when we've made mistakes. Now that we've made this many mistakes, I hope we begin admitting that some of these are clear mistakes. Stimulus packages that do not mandate some sort of investment always in the long run do no real good.
That's a big mistake, $160 billion mistake. But Congressman Issa, hey, you're a good man for admitting a mistake.
He's one of the few guys down there who can read a set of financials.
But guys who
you got to throw him
you don't waste $160 billion.